Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining us today in the webinar on food and beverage exports to the US market. This webinar is a part of the digital initiatives launched by Enterprise Greece to support Greek exporters and small businesses in the face of challenges posed by the coronavirus pandemic. Fortunately, these past few months, Greece and its exporters have managed relatively well. Greek exports have not been interrupted by the pandemic, and the country as a whole managed to contain the outbreak. Enterprise Greece is now part of the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which allows us to expand our international outreach. We are presenting this and other webinars to come in cooperation with our Greek embassies and consulates abroad. To this effect, I would like to extend our warm thanks to the Office of Economic and Commercial Affairs at the Greek Consulate in New York for their cooperation in organizing the event, as well as our esteemed panelists who come from the US food industry. Because of the importance of the US market to Greek exporters, today's webinar is the second one focused on this market. It will be followed by a third one next week, featuring Greek technology challenges and opportunities in the US market, specifically on Tuesday, the 30th of June, which is organized in cooperation with the Greek Office of Economic and Commercial Affairs in San Francisco. In the last few years, Greece has seen substantial export growth as the Greek economy reoriented itself to international markets and Greek businesses expanded overseas, creating added value with products, services, and innovation. Our goal is to build on that momentum in spite of the current challenges and take advantage of the opportunities created. The record growth of Greek exports around the world includes a sharp increase in exports to the US market. Food and beverage is a leading sector in this trend, accounting for approximately 30% of the export volume to the United States. Greece is known for its excellent food products and wines, which have been gaining ground around the world with the popularity of the Mediterranean diet. In the US, this has also spurred a new generation of sophisticated Greek restaurants. Here, consumers can get to know our outstanding gastronomy products, from tasteful olive oils to delicious cheeses, and of course, the wonderful wines of Greece. Normally, at this time of the year, we would be participating in the Summer Fancy Food Show held in New York City to present the wide range of unique Greek food and beverage products available to American buyers and consumers. Unfortunately, that won't happen this year, but instead, we are here today, and we are also planning on providing an opportunity for Greek producers to meet American buyers and distributors with online B2B meetings later on this autumn. I look forward to hearing from our distinguished guests, experts, speakers joining us today, and to the insights that they will share with us on food and beverage market in the United States. Thank you, and now I give the floor to Yorgos Mikhailidis, the head of our Office of Economic and Commercial Affairs at the Consulate of Greece in New York. Yorgos, the floor is with you.
Thank you very much, Betty, for this short introduction. I'd like to welcome you all. Good morning in New York, good afternoon in Greece. I'd like to thank both Enterprise Greece for this beautiful event, as well as our attendees for taking the time to be with us here today. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving a short, but I believe comprehensive overview of where we stand right now with the Greek exports to the US, what the challenges are and what the opportunities are. And then the rest of our panelists will be giving a deeper, so to say, insight of how things are in the specific separate different sectors of the US food industry, the e-commerce, food service, retail, so forth, so on. Non-GMO, organic products, and that's exactly the total value of Greek exports to the US amounted to $1.6 billion in 2019, as opposed to $1.6 billion. So we saw it in 2018. So we saw a slight decline from 2018 to 2019, a decline by almost 6%. Now, what's interesting, the interesting part is that the total value of Greek exports represents almost 30% of the overall value of the Greek exports to the US, equaling more or less the total value of the industrial goods, the Greek exports of industrial goods. The percentage-wise, the total value of industrial goods was 30% in 2019. Food and beverage was 29%, so it's all more or less the same. Now, this fact, I think, speaks volumes about the importance of the food and beverage sector as far as the Greek exports are concerned and its presence in the US. Now, that's a very important point. But on the other hand, the thing is that there is a very short, so to say, array of products that we export to the US, because 38% of the products exported to the US in the food and beverage sector is table olives. The total value of Greek table olive exports in the US was $161 million. So again, that represented 38% of the overall value of the exports. And then the rest of the so-called flagship Greek products, as for example, olive oil, cheeses, pizzas, each one of them represents just less than 10% of the total value. One other very interesting thing is that in the cheeses category, I would say that almost 66%, almost $20 million, is feta cheese. Feta cheese that we're all familiar with, and the rest is yellow cheeses. So, and then we have the extra virgin olive oil, feta cheese, table olives. So we can all see that the kind of goods that we export to the UN, it's not that we have such a large spectrum of different products. Now, one thing that I'd like to draw your attention is the fact that Greek food export products were not that much affected by the additional tariffs that were imposed by the US administration by Section 301. They were imposed in October 2019. Flagship products, as for example, table olives and olive oil, were not affected. The only products that were affected, and then an additional an additional duty of 25% was imposed on cheeses and pizzas. The primary product that was affected by that was, of course, the feta cheese. What do I believe the strong points of Greek products are? And I believe this is a point also that some other of our participants are going to be talking about. And I would say that if I could give an outline of what I believe the strong points are the following. Greek products are authentic and they have a unique taste. Most of the Greek products are produced by small family producers that put a lot of effort and expertise in producing whatever it is that they produce by using natural ingredients. So that makes the products very tasty. Then the other thing is the health claims. A large portion of our food exports are organic products. So this actually fills a demand by the average American consumer, because we can see that the trend, especially among younger consumers, is to go for healthy, natural, non-GMO, organic products. And that's exactly the kind of elements that Greek products incorporate. The other thing is the top quality. As this is an element that it's more or less the same with my first point. bringing us back to the fact that most of them are produced by small companies, that they have a very long expertise in the long of time in producing whatever product it is that they produce. And then I would say that they are competitively priced. Greek products are not the cheapest because they are produced in low to medium volumes. But on the other hand, if we take the price quality ratio, taking a look at the market and speaking with Greek exporters and producers, I've drawn the conclusion in the course of time that they are affordably priced, taking into consideration, of course, the quality price ratio, right? So these are our strong points, I would say. One major challenge that Greek products are facing right now in the US market is the fact that the term Greek can be misleading in terms of origin or authenticity because of the US legal framework. And what I mean by that is the fact that whenever a Greek product, and not only Greek product for that matter, but I would say also other products, like for example, Italian products, as soon as they reach a certain point of quote unquote fame, then other competitors, other stakeholders jump into the market and, so to say, hijack the products by mislabeling them. I mean, that's at least what I believe, as Greek. The most prominent example in this case is feta cheese, because they call it feta cheese, whereas feta is so to say a word that is very, very much a part of the way that the cheese, the white cheese that we call feta, is produced in Greece. So now then we have producers in the US or in France or in Denmark or I don't know where else, that they take their product and they mislabel it as feta. Then, for example, we have Greek yogurt. There are companies that produce the product in the same way, they use the same production method as we do in Greece, and they label their product Greek. I believe that the only way right now, because of the lack of the necessary legal framework, is for the producer to take a look at the label and make sure that the product is actually labeled as a Greek product or product of Greece. I would like to say that it was an effort was in process prior to the present administration, the present US administration, the Trump administration, taking office in 2016, for a bilateral agreement between the EU and the United States for a legal framework to be established that will actually render it impossible for US producers or other countries to label their products as Greek or Spanish or I don't know what else, and also to protect the so-called protected designation of origin or protected geographical indication kind of products in the same way that they are protected in the European Union. I'd like to say that a similar agreement was reached between the European Union and other countries, as for example, Japan recently and Canada last year. And so we were looking forward that we would have a similar agreement with the US, but as soon as the new administration took office in 2016, I'm sorry, all talks and negotiation on that issue were interrupted. Now, what are the products that I believe bear the best potential to further penetrate into the UN market, to further penetrate into the US market? I believe that these products are, again, olives, in spite of the fact that it's already the primary food product that we currently export to the US, and that is because we're seeing an ever growing demand in the food service sector because of the increasing number of restaurants and food venues that they offer the so-called Mediterranean cuisine. This is for the exact same reason. I believe that there is room for improvement also for our olive oil. As you are probably all already aware of, Greece is the number one in the world extra virgin olive oil producer in the world. Spain is actually the number one olive oil producer, but Greece is the number one extra virgin olive oil producer in the world, which is, of course, as I believe most of you know, and is the highest quality of olive oil. Other products that have good potential is, of course, wine, like acetyl, herbs, spices, honey, and healthy snacks, because of the trend of the younger consumers to go for such products, as for example, the healthy snacks. I'd like to touch a little bit upon the issue of e-commerce, because it is a very growing trend, and I believe it has a lot of it actually has a lot of potential for Greek exporters. E-commerce has been growing in the US by almost 14% during the last couple of years. E-commerce in general. We saw the number of US consumers buying online quadrupling since 2000. The main reasons why I believe that there is a strong potential for Greek exporters to take advantage of e-commerce is the following. Number one is because the online grocery sales are expected to grow by almost tenfold from 2016 to 2025. Online grocery sales are expected to triple by 2023, reaching $74 billion. The primary products that consumers buy are packaged and canned goods with long perishable dates. Also, it is the younger consumers that actually right now buy mostly online, the so-called millennials, Gen X, Gen Z. I would say by average, 40% of the younger generation buy online, as opposed to only 20% of the older baby boomers generation. On top of that, online sales of the specialty category increased by 24% in 2018 and are expected to double by 2022. So by taking into consideration all these different aspects, I mean, the fact that the trend, the nature of the trend in the US in the e-commerce department, and the fact that the Greek companies are mostly small, medium-sized family business that are not able to bear the high costs that are associated with penetrating a highly competitive and saturated market as the US, I believe that they can actually pay a lot of attention by exploiting this part of the market, the e-commerce, because I believe it fits them well. Because the Greek exporters actually produce specialty food products. Most of them that are exported to the US are packaged or goods with long perishable dates. So they cater into this section of the market. And that's just about it. I'd like to leave you here, and I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Phil Kafarakis, who is the former president of the Specialty Food Association and currently a consultant with companies and entities that are looking to export to the US. So, Mr. Kafarakis, the floor is now yours.
Okay, I believe, I'm hoping you can see my screen. And again, thank you for the invitation. It is a sad day when large events, particularly the Fancy Food Show, have to be canceled. It was a 66th annual show, but the association is stronger than ever and is planning on having a fall presentation that is going to be online, and you'll be receiving, I'm sure, information about it. And there are plans to move forward with the Winter Fancy Food Show in San Francisco in 2021. I continue to be involved with the association as I now end my contract and begin to advise boards CEOs and government trade agencies with the conditions here in the U.S. marketplace. Let me tell you that this particular presentation is going to be filled with a lot of information. It's intended to be a guide for you and a resource. So it's really important that you make sure you receive it from Enterprise Greece. And please check out the links. I've gone to effort to make sure that you'll see fact-based information. And we're going to cover in the 10 minutes that we have at a very high level a couple of things that matter. The drivers of the economic behavior today as things emerge here in the U.S. in a completely new dynamic. And we'll talk about the supply chain. You heard a little bit about the impact of online sales and what it's doing and what it'll continue to do. It's important you have a risk mitigation planning, because when you talk to the community, whether it's a retailer, food service, distributor, importer, people are going to want to know your plan. And there's a need for marketing and an engagement in a manner that you're probably not accustomed to. So I'm hoping you take information today and you can make some decisions on whether you're trying to enter the market, you're trying to expand in the market, or you're going to exit the market for a period of time. There are people that are doing that right now, believe it or not. Or you're just going to hold and wait and see. Important for you to make some decisions and prioritize. And it's important that you find someone that's going to represent you in the marketplace today that you can trust and is also trusted with the community of buyers that you are targeting. Again, the information on this page is general, but I would really encourage you to check out the information and put it in your plans. The one thing I think people are not understanding right now is that between COVID-19 and between the social unrest that this country is going through right now, people are not seriously understanding what's happening in the marketplace. And as you address your customer in the marketplace, it's important you're up to speed on what's happening almost on a daily basis, and you approach the situation with empathy. As much as everybody in the world thinks that the U.S. buyer is pretty much just the facts and transactional, the U.S. buyer today in any segment of the business is really interested in making sure you understand their problem and that you can help them with their problem. And their problem right now is local, and it has to do with their consumers, and it has to do with their ability to manage their supply chain. So please understand what's going on. You hear about the stock market. It's still in a place where it hasn't fully recovered. People are sharing the economic success of the market, but you've got to understand that the market doesn't seriously reflect what's happening with the day-to-day consumers, especially when you think about the conditions that have to do with unemployment and what is happening with consumers in their daily purchases. Trying to advance the slide. Important for you to know that the specialty food outlook continues to be a very aggressive growth compared to other food segments. The new 2019 research from the Specialty Food Association is actually coming out this month. It will show the business community expanding, particularly in the total marketplace at about 158 billion. It continues to grow. The research indicates that it's now more than 19% already and moving towards 22 to 25 in 2022. Some of this information is gathered from last year's report. And as you can see, the growth slowing down. There is some concern, particularly the next 2 years in particular, of the impact of COVID, because consumers have returned to basic products that have filled their cupboards. So a lot of the specialty food sales took off as the pantry loading was declining. And now supply chains, as you'll probably hear from John Lawson at Whole Foods, are trying to recover at a basic level. The growth, though, continues to be there. It continues to be in specific categories that you should be prepared for. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. This information that you see here is Main Street information that represents the independent channel, and there's some very large grocery stores that are not included in this data, particularly Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and some of the other private labels. The dynamics of the consumer behavior is really important right now when you think about the fact that there's 13% unemployment versus 3.5% unemployment, and more than 21 million people are out of work. They are dependent on government assistance and aid. A lot of the small businesses have gotten the PPP money, but the big question mark here is what happens when we get into August and September and all this money stops? Consumers right now are being bombarded by media and culture. You really need to be plugged into the empathy and the discussion around diversity and equity when you're talking to consumers in your message. You've probably seen a lot of the statements that have been made around Black Lives Matter and activism when it comes to social inequality. And it's important that that message resonates in the conversations you're having with your buyer, but also the conversations you as a company are going to have if indeed you are going to be able to be recognized as a brand in the community. The important part of this too is the political environment continues now to seep into social media and culture. And as we get into the back half of this year, the political messaging will take over everything. So it's important, again, you understand how your message fits into that. It will drown everything out. It's getting aggressive. You're probably following it. And the important component of this is that families are cocooning and they're actually bonding. So family has become a much bigger part of the US society than traditionally it was. They're almost Greek in nature when you think about people are going to be going back home. Millennials are living at home, families are cocooning, they're living with each other, and the situation is one that is bringing families together. And what a wonderful time to speak to that when you speak about food, comfort, wellness, and how that then affects diet, and how that affects then again the transparency that comes with the information you give about your products. You heard George speak to the fact that there's concerns about geographic preference and how it's recognized. And it's really important that as you talk about your products, now you bring health and wellness into this, and there is transparency with respect to information you provide, whether it's on the label, on your website, that consumers can grab and gravitate to your brand. So it's part of what they do. And of course, technology matters. The big component of this is understanding how it's shaping the supply chain. Online, yes, is a big deal. It's becoming a big deal. And specialty food online is about a $5 billion business right now. Of the $158 billion, $5 billion is online. And we do predict that it'll turn into 10 by 2022. So it'll double in almost 2 years. So the online channel we'll discuss as well. Again, on this slide, there's some information about consumer sentiment and labor statistics. It's important you understand that. And now that everybody is starting to go back to work and opening up, you can see some government information on COVID-19. A couple of interesting areas for you to pay attention to depending on where you want to sell your product. So if it's in retail, understand that the retail business has been booming, particularly in late March. 30% increases in major chains. I'm sure John's going to tell you about what happened in Whole Foods when everybody started hoarding. But the last couple of weeks in March, and particularly April, business was booming for everybody. Inventories were being depleted, store shelves were being cleaned out, and it was record sales that are now leveling out because of, again, how much hoarding took place. It was a record time for downloads when you think about grocery applications and this notion of click and collect, pre-order, go get it at the store, and the variations of the supply chain with delivery that started to take shape here. The biggest category I want to bring to your attention in all of this, when you think about retail and food, plant-based foods continue to just accelerate. This is a panic environment. People are buying product that they traditionally wouldn't buy. There's a lot of trial, and that category across multiple products continues to grow. The problems exist in food service when 2/3 of the American restaurants are struggling. People are not eating out clearly. We have huge losses in the restaurant business over this period of time. But when you think about the clever nature of restaurateurs and how they've survived this, they're actually going to come out of this bigger and better than you can imagine. When you think about restaurants here in New York City, particularly Lois Fiatorio, and what is being done in a Mediterranean environment and how they transferred to delivery immediately, they've transferred to pickup immediately. And just this week, they were one of the very first restaurants to be able to open outside seating and have 50% of their capacity taken up immediately. There is opportunity in food service, but you have to follow what's going on in the supply chain. Those are high-level areas of interest that I think your business will benefit from. There are some new dynamics in food categories you should be sensitive to when you think about what happened during this period of time. At a very high level, yes, there are components like water that's taking off, tuna, rice, canned meats, even the beans, but there's the fresh alternatives. Oat milk and a variety of dairy products have also come to bear. It's important you start to follow this information. I provided you some information from IRI. There's information that I wrote in my Forbes column you should look at about the supply chain. But these are categories that are growing rapidly and will continue to grow as we come out of the crisis. The plant-based food information, again, is worthy of your attention. You really need to make sure that you're trying to figure out where you fit in. This is a very legitimate business. It's not just meat. It's also plant-based cheeses, creams, yogurts, etc. And it'll continue to be an area of focus. I also provided you here some information on consumption as it continues to grow going into the summer months. The food service is coming back, but it's going to take a long time when you think about competing with the large chains that have heavy takeout, delivery, and drive-through. And you'll also notice a lot of food companies in the US are not giving quarterly guidance, which is affecting their financials. But companies that are into these four big categories, multifunction beverages, protein on the go, the snacking, and the cannabis, are growing at 2 times the rate. So again, areas of interest for you. There's some information from Nielsen that you should look at. A couple of pointers when you're talking about innovation and trying to get new products on the shelf. It's important right now to be very specific and prepared for what customer you're going to talk to. If you have a basic customer, you need to be close to your basic core customer. This is not the time to try to be all things to all people and get the distribution that's scattered. It's important you're prepared. Now is not the time to be asking people like John to do you a favor or help you with 1 or 2 things that they need to have to do their job. So being prepared, making sure you have all your information is going to be really important. And then I think it's important that you provide information and you are able to make rational decisions so that you deliver on what you say. Do not overcommit. It's going to cause you a problem. Again, flexibility is important and having backup plans. The big call of the day here is to solve the problem before it becomes a real bigger problem and you are able to anticipate any of the complexity. The supply chain dynamics, this is another one where I suggest you take a look, depending on where you want to be and what channel you want to focus on. These are some tidbits to help you understand how to be able to approach that. The one thing I'll leave you with shortly is the consumer direct and the e-commerce online environment, which is just flourishing right now. And that's important because your buyer and the community at large want your followers to go shop in their stores. So it's not just about your product. It's also about the community you have, the loyal purchasing power that you have on your social media that can help make decisions. This, again, is for you to decide which area you want to be in. It's going to be difficult to be in all of them, but at least it gives you some framework on what to do next. The supply chain logistic piece I wanted to share with you is based on the fact that driver and truck capacity are limited. It's very tight. Even in this environment, getting containers, getting trucks, getting movement around the next several months has been a real problem. And that problem is a global problem, but it also means that you have to take this on and not rely on your buyer to try to give you a solution. Again, more details, there's some research here for supply chain logistics you should reference. Risk mitigation planning is another component of how this should play out for you. This is just a couple of steps. 40% of it has to do with kind of an internal component. 40% of it is an external component, making sure your basic control plans are in order and you're doing work as it's regulated by the government. But 60% of your work should be internal, with what you're doing with your workforce, what you're doing with your business continuity, your risks, and being able to provide that information to your buyer. This is a competitive advantage for people that are doing it. There is a source here that can help you with that. And it's important you speak to people in a third-party environment that are now starting to come forward with plans and certifications that will give you a competitive advantage. The other component here is you've got to understand and invest now in an area that you might be under invested in, aggressively investing in your social media, your communications, and an overall omni-channel strategy that connects your message, your products to consumers right now is really, really important. Clear value propositions, information about your brand, social causes that are becoming a very big part of today's consumer's life and purchase intent is really important. Having a shopping cart on your site is really, really important, and having uniformity around what you do on the various social platforms. You do one thing on Twitter, you do another thing on Instagram, you have to do something else on your Facebook page, and leveraging things like YouTube channels and the whole notion of TikTok. If you haven't understood what that is, I'm sure you'll hear more about it, but I encourage you to bring all those together so that it provides you again with a following that you can turn into a local and regional customer that comes to you directly, but also is shared with your particular customer. And lastly, it's going to be very important as you become accustomed to this new world of doing these type of presentations online, you make sure you know what's available to you with all these services and make sure your voice is represented. You have to have at least one of these that's part of your communication platform, but you also have to make sure you're using the platform that your particular buyer is using primarily. So being flexible, being proficient, and understanding how these things work before you actually get into it with them is going to be critically important as you bring your plan together. I know that's a lot of information. I'm hopeful that you will be able to provide this information, be provided this information, and you can make some decisions on how you approach the marketplace. Thank you again for your attention. And now I think the main attraction and where you're going to get a lot of great information, I'm going to turn it over to my friend John Lawson, the regional buyer at Whole Foods Northeast. Thank you very much.
Phil, thank you very much for a wonderful, pretty long presentation, but very comprehensive one. Now, at this point, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. John Lawson, regional buyer with Whole Foods Market, who's going to be touching upon the food, the retail sector, the so-called brick and mortar part of the market. And John, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, so first of all, big thanks to Phil for a comprehensive presentation. That was really, really, I don't know how you packed all that into the 10 or so minutes there. That was really, really useful. What I want to talk to you today about is really basic. What Phil touched on as well is sort of the proper way to present a Whole Foods Market, and especially relative to COVID and relative to products coming from Greece. So this is a very basic presentation on how to present your products, and a little bit of background on Whole Foods Market as well in North America and globally, the UK. and how our structure is a little bit, because I think it's very helpful if you are going to present a product to understand the structure that you're presenting a product into. Obviously, things are very different with COVID, and I think that now more than ever, and to Phil's point, is for any retailer that you're presenting to, not just Whole Foods Market, but to any retailer, you want to make sure, like he said, that you're being flexible and following the guidelines that are laid out. So Whole Foods Market is 11 total regions across the US. So I won't go through all of them, but my region that I represent, I do purchasing, center store purchasing for the Northeast, which is based in New York City, and Jersey City actually, but New York City in spirit. And we cover New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So my department consists of 5 sub-teams, which is 2 sub-teams of dry grocery, dairy, frozen, and bulk. And just a quick breakdown of the structure of Whole Foods Market, a national brand, so Whole Foods Market is based in Austin, Texas. Any brand that is in 4 or more regions is considered a national brand. Any brand that is in 3 or less regions is a regional brand. This is very important because a national brand will speak to a category manager or a category merchant in Austin, of whom there are about 16, and they're responsible for launching and developing national brands. Also, every Whole Foods Market region has a regional grocery buyer who's focused on identifying, finding, sourcing new items, whether they are local or from somewhere else, such as Greece. So there's also a local forager who is specifically tasked with identifying hyper-local products across all departments. We follow a category management process. In category management, there are 10 months or rounds of review for reset. And during those rounds, there's a specific set of categories that are under review. For a Northeast regional submission, we have an alias that we ask you to send information to. And we work about 8 months out. So right now we are wrapping up new items for January. Very important to point out that post-COVID, or even during COVID, we have not altered our process. We are still reviewing and onboarding new items as we have been. We are also still opening new stores. One of our stores was delayed, Manhattan West, which is Hudson Yards, but that is scheduled to open in the back half of July, and we're very excited about that. That should be a big flagship store for us. We also have stores opening in New Jersey and Long Island before the end of this year, and those are not delayed, those are moving forward. Finally, the Whole Foods Market regional calendar, we have deadlines for submission, and part of that submission is sending a new item PowerPoint and a new item form, an Excel, which are posted on a Google Drive. And I believe the folks from the trade office will send this around to you guys, and you'll have all the links and the email addresses on this. Just a few more housekeeping items. We ask the samples not be sent unless by request. Obviously, right now, just getting into the office is tricky. So with any retailer right now, you want to check with them before you send samples. You do not want to just blind send samples, because you're basically potentially overloading somebody who doesn't have anything that they can, anywhere that they can put them, or can't even get to them at this point. You know, we will ask questions about the product based on the information that you submit on the new item PowerPoint and the information that you submit to us. So just a few more tips on submitting. We are unable to confirm receipts. Make sure you're submitting products for the correct category, and products can be submitted for multiple reviews. An important point about distribution to make here. Distribution in our region is very important. We have, unlike most of the other Whole Foods Market regions, we have multiple distribution channels. With COVID, this has actually become a major point because there was a huge strain on distribution. Phil touched on this a little bit as well. The ability to get products, to keep the supply chain flowing and get products into the warehouses and out of the warehouses into the stores severely strained. We're still feeling the effects of that. So your distribution choice, a lot of folks had made distribution choices that they were either very happy with or that let them down. So you really want to make sure you're asking the right questions when you're selecting distribution for your product into a retailer. Whole Foods market quality standards. This is a very important area for us. We adhere to strict ingredient and sourcing standards, and we require very specific third-party verifications for products sold in our stores. We don't sell anything with artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners, or preservatives. And I've included a link to the approved ingredient list. And we also advise against labeling products with unverified claims. Not just all natural, but also health claims as well. You need to be very careful on that. And we always advise folks to consult a food lawyer or trade organization to help with that. And SFA is definitely a great resource for finding people to help you verify those claims. So just a couple of other third-party verifications for gluten-free and for non-GMO project. Just in the interest of time, I'm keeping myself on a timer here. I'm gonna sort of skip through this one, but you know, a few points that I want to make just with COVID and with Greek products specifically is, Georgios's presentation in the beginning was really useful. 50% of the products coming from Greece are oils, olives, and cheese. I think there's a lot more opportunity from what I've seen for other product categories. Touching on Phil's presentation, customers right now are the trends shifted really abruptly with COVID. They shifted, you know, from some sort of avant-garde keto, things like that, and people really went back to the basics. Comfort foods, social justice, because of the Black Lives Matter, is a very important one. Value is because of the economic situation, and to Phil's excellent point, plant-based continues to skyrocket. And I want to tack on to his point that plant-based is not a fad; it's a long-term trend. Plant-based is going to continue to evolve. It's been evolving for many years, and it's really burst onto the mainstream in the last couple of years, and really don't see any signs of that stopping. Another area that was very interesting during COVID was baking. Our baking sets were wiped out consistently during COVID, and we are still working on recovering those sets. And then also pantry loading, we still feel the effects from that. Bagged rice, bagged beans, things like that. So very important to really focus on that information that Phil had, to identify what the current trends are, to listen to your customers, to know your customers, and to understand how you can support a launch that will speak to them directly. So that gets us to supporting your product line strategy. Super important to have a strong go-to-market strategy. Again, Phil had some really much more specific points that were really good. I want to talk about social media for a second, because in the absence of demos in our stores, social media has become the, for lack of a better word, has become king of consumer connection. And you know, you want to think about social media by demographics, and the best broadline way that I've heard to outline this is TikTok is for the teens, Instagram is for the 20s to 40s, Facebook is for the 40s and up. Twitter sort of covers across all of them. You know, there's also Twitch out there, and you want to make sure that you are leveraging these to find the customer that best fits the demographic, whether it's all of them or whether it's specific ones. You know, Zoom is also very important, because Zoom is a way you can actually connect with customers in their home. I mean, there are plenty of the online networking sites, but Zoom, this is the Zoom age, and you want to make sure that you're finding ways if you can't connect with customers in person in a store, which hopefully that's going to change soon, then you want to figure out ways that you can use these platforms to connect with them in their homes, to help them understand how they can use your product and get those repeat purchases, which is obviously key. It's very important to have a promotional strategy, a demo strategy, and a social media strategy. You also want to make sure you're monitoring your sales through the register. That's IRI data on one side, and then with Whole Foods Market, we actually provide that data to the brands. So you can actually see how much you're selling in our stores. When I say pivots, I mean flexibility. And I really like Phil's point about flexibility. Packaging, your design, your focus, your call outs, super important to make sure that you are, again, hearing your customer and addressing their concerns, their needs, their wants, their fears, and being, to Phil's point, empathetic. So you want to make sure that your product addresses their needs. So very important to focus on. If you put a product out there and your customer is telling you that they're doing something else with it, you don't want to tell the customer that's not what they're supposed to do with it. You want to figure out how to adapt your packaging and your focus to pick up that need state, because the customer is telling you something, and the brands that succeed are the brands that listen and respond. Also, just quickly encourage brokers and merchandisers in our stores. And in-store demos will be back, hopefully at some point. Promotions continue at Whole Foods Market. And then we always encourage mentoring between brands. So that is that's really the end of my presentation. I just wanted to touch on a couple of other things in the minute or two I have left here. So one of the things that's really important is you want to try to build a relationship with a buyer at any retailer that you're working with. And you know, a lot of times we partner with chefs, we partner with folks who have a product line or a restaurant or something like that. So like Chef Loy of Loya Sartorio has been a great partner for us. We've launched pastas. And we're continuing to feel the market and see what else is out there. So you want to figure out ways to find folks who are able to use your products and can actually connect with customers in other places to identify ways that they are able to use the products. Let's see what else. I had a couple other notes here. I think the DOP, the designation of the origin, the protected origin is super important as well, especially for Greek products, to make sure that you're identifying your product as authentically Greek. And I can't think of a better way than using that certification. Finally, you know, in addition to all the data-driven, and I'll leave you with this, the data-driven research that you have out there, and there's a plethora of it, I would also encourage you and remind you that sometimes the best place to research is one-to-one, separated by 6 feet, of course, talking to customers, and also in stores. Like, you know, go into a store and look at the sets, see what's out of stock, and see, does your product fit into that space? Are you able to provide something in that space that a customer is looking for that is not currently available right now? Sometimes that's going to be a quicker pivot than you're able to provide, but oftentimes you're able to you could turn something around and fill a need state that has been unavailable in that time frame. So I will leave it with that. I think we're gonna have a time for a Q&A at the end of this. So I will hand it back, and thank you so much.
John, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, very, very comprehensive one. That was great. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our last panelist, who is going to be Mr. Konstantinos Orbanelis. He's the founder and owner of an e-shop, Greek Bio Store, which specializes and sells high quality Greek products. he's going to be speaking especially focusing on the e-commerce part of the food sector. So Konstantinos, it's great having you with us today. The floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon in Athens and good morning in the States. Thanks for the invite. It's an honor to be here in such an esteemed panel and participate and show some of the data and best practices and analysis for how the online e-commerce is looking like for 2020 and 2021. So some of the points that we're going to see have been shown already, and Phil and Mr. Lawson have presented some of the data that we're going to see now. So we're starting seeing that 2019 was a record-breaking year of $600 billion market in the US. We also see some of the stats that George touched earlier, that on a year-over-year increase, we realized a 14.9% increase for e-commerce alone, which came to be 100% from 2016. So in just 4 years' time, we've seen a 100% increase in the e-commerce, which is impressive. In 2018, the numbers were at 13.6%. We also see the retail market penetration, which is 16% in 2019 of the total retail sales. These numbers are only projected to increase, and we see that in 2018 and 17, the numbers were at 14.4 and 13.2% respectively. We also see comparative growth for the last 10 years, from 2010 to 2019, the e-commerce averaged an increase of 15.2%. At the same time, the retail averaged 3.8% growth. So that's a very impressive number for the e-commerce space. And we wouldn't have been here talking about e-commerce if it hadn't been for Amazon. So we know that the Amazon shopping experience was a breakthrough, establishing new norms and standards for consumer goods, logistics, customer behavior, and online experience. And the disruption it brought to brick-and-mortar stores was devastating and actually accounted for a big percentage of department store closures. It has made the retail shopping obsolete, established new securities and guarantees, and changed drastically the consumer behavior. So why e-commerce is the new norm? We already went through some very useful information from the previous presenters, but these are just some main pillars, we would call them, of e-commerce growth and strong e-commerce foundation. So that is the logistics industry progress, which continues to develop to a high degree, where we see guaranteed deliveries, tracking applications, return policies, and specific brand quality promises that secure a good feeling for the transaction and the purchases with the consumers. We see also enhanced user experiences. We see personalization, availability, security, and anticipation of needs. The reduced cost and exponential reach for the e-commerce space are also big advantages and have been set in good foundation. We see a very low cost when it comes to design. We also see immense resources available for anyone that wants to venture on the online space. And we see things like Internet of Things and interconnectivity, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, like when we're talking specific segments, non-food in most of the cases, they do help lower cost and provide an exponential potential and reach for the new businesses. We also see an increasing global demand for specialized products. We cannot say enough that the customers these days are educated, they're browsing through, they want to get to their doorstep products from different places of the world at normal delivery times. So connected borders, trade agreements, and specific markets are driving increased demands for specialized products. So why e-commerce benefits the customers and why e-commerce benefits the retailers? So for the customers, convenience and easiness is a big thing these days, and especially with younger age groups. Time saving and faster and secure purchases. Also personalization, adaptation, and flexibility, as we heard earlier from previous speakers. When it comes to logistics, eradicating borders, providing timely and monitored deliveries, as well as guaranteed terms and return policies, are also some benefits that the customers realize these days. And when we're talking price and availability, we see that the internet provides the goods always available for the customer and year-round, and they're also providing to the customer information and data-based decisions and purchases. They also see various options across the internet, and they can choose for themselves what is best based on their criteria and final decisions. When we say e-commerce benefits the retailers, e-commerce benefits the retailers, we know that any retailer can address it to a specific target market. We have multi-channel trading options, whether that's a B2C, whether that's B2B or more specialized markets. We're going to talk a little bit later about the B2B and how much it's going to grow as estimated from various different analysts. International reach and customers, exponential growth potential. That's just some of the benefits for your target markets. Some common denominators here for the customer and user experiences, the customization opportunities, data-driven decisions, and going after your specific buyer personas and niche customers. When we're talking about operating costs, we know that e-commerce offers a significant reduction in fixed overheads. We're seeing minimum startup costs relevant to other ventures and specifically owning a physical store, and you can lessen or adjust or customize your advertising and marketing expenses. Now, we do have already some trends entering a new decade of online shopping, and what happened, we probably experienced some of them in an accelerated format during the COVID-19 era that we're going through now. So some of the trends that we see in the online shopping are augmented reality, voice search, and standing a little bit on voice search, we can say that it's projected that US households will own a smart speaker by 75% of US households will own a smart speaker by 2025. That's a very big number. And we realize that people, and especially younger age groups, are daily depending on voice assistants like Alexa, Siri, or Google Assistant. Artificial intelligence, chatbots, new developing payment methods, and a global effort from behemoths of the industry like PayPal to create a central wallet for all payment experiences, and also B2B platforms, which is projected to be a $1.1 trillion market in US in 2021. Some of the trends that we also see are personalization for the customer that is enabled from artificial intelligence and various digital tools. We also see subscription models thrive in an online business format, and we see some of the previous speakers reference that too, how strong the video engagement is for e-commerce businesses, and especially at the time of stay-at-home orders. And we also see that enhanced mobile experiences have come to realize 70% of the transactions online are taking place these days in US through a mobile, whether that's an app or a browser. And then we are experiencing at this time the importance of Black Lives Matter and various other activisms. So integrated social responsibility and cost-driven missions are some important factors that actually affect purchasing decisions, especially in younger age groups, LGBT groups, and parents. So USA is a vital market for Greek food and beverage businesses and e-commerce, and we've seen some of the statistics earlier provided by George and the the consulate of New York. So we'll see that Greek products are associated with health benefits and premium nutrition. That's a standard and well-recognized fact for the Greek products. They are considered to be pure, delectable, and exotic to a very big extent due to their scarcity in their marketplace. Consumer sentiment and predisposition is very positive for the authentic Greek foods, creating an automatic advantage for sales. And I'm sure the buyers will agree with me on that. The impact on various designated Greek products, such as yogurt, olives, feta, pita, as we spoke about those earlier, is indirectly assisting raising awareness on new authentic and specialty foods. Also, our unique culinary tradition, when showcased right, is a great tool for converting into sales. We cannot say enough or speak enough about synergies with chefs and restaurants, as Phil mentioned earlier. Many of our local ingredients, limited production, and handmade products do present a premium value when marketing and promoted in the luxury space. And last but not least, it's very important to note that our agricultural system has systematically avoided the use of GMO and can be considered a national strategy. Going through and analyzing the Greek products in the US marketplace, there are several things that we can take note of. Some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And what are the strengths that we see when we see the Greek products in the marketplace? Quality, authenticity, and designated origin. As Mr. Lawson emphasized earlier, it is very important to showcase the designated origin and authenticity of several regions within Greece. And to some extent, they are known in the US market. To some other extent, it's our task to educate the customers for them. And then the non-GMO, as we spoke earlier, could be and should be developed in a national strategy. What are some of the weaknesses that we see? Some of the weaknesses that we would see is definitely packaging and presentation and specific callouts. So we do see that a lot of the products, whether they're intended for internal use in Greece or exported in the European Union, they do not meet certain requirements, certain packaging standards. And we have to say that the competitive and saturated market here in the States dictate higher level and premium packaging if you want to be placing your product in the best marketplaces. We also see content marketing and sales support, and I'm sure we all read Mr. Lawson's notes earlier that you do need to have these things in place when you're targeting your products in such a big market. Some of the opportunities is entering new trade channels, market penetration, education for your customer and your loyal fans, and representation. And what do we mean by new trade channels? There are specialized channels such as cruise ships, government entities, corporate gifts, and holiday season gifts, which are not exploited, and they definitely present a great opportunity for a lot of the Greek businesses, even on the online spectrum. Market penetration, we spoke a lot about that, and you can definitely tailor-make your business strategy around what's the market that you're addressing your products to. We're talking here 50 different states with different buying habits, different income levels, and a lot of data to go through to customize your market penetration plan. When we talk about education, and we're really big about that, and I think all of us representing the Mediterranean diet should be, and the Greek diet specifically, we have to keep educating our customers. Daily, we realize that there's not enough education out there, and actually consumers are thriving, and they do want to know about the health benefits, the claims for our products, and why they present such a big value for a healthy and healthier diet. And when we're talking about representation, there's definitely a lot that can be done on a local, regional, and national level, both here and in Greece, to better represent the products and stand behind any venture, whether that's online or in a retail space. And some of the threats that we see, both on e-commerce and in other segments, is that we do have growing competition, especially from neighboring countries in the Balkans, Turkey, Northern Africa, and we do need to take note of that. They don't represent the same benefits and the same authenticity with our products, and we need to be showcasing this value. We also see established portals and domains that do have a big market share that is going to be a struggle, and a specific plan needs to be laid out on how you can acquire customers and claim some of this market share for your business. We also see, because of the high demand for specific product categories, product dilution and adulteration that needs to be explained to the customer, and also at the same time showcasing why our products present such a great value for them. And the last but not the least threat that we see when it comes to the Greek products is certifications. We have growing discussions with a lot of our partners and a lot of companies based in Greece, and we cannot stress enough the importance of certifications when it comes to kosher, to organic, to gluten-free, to plant-based that the previous speakers mentioned. They're all very important for such an advanced market and leading market like the US. Some of the lessons learned for e-commerce entrepreneurs, you definitely don't want to start using obsolete technology or outdated tools when you start a new venture. You don't have to compromise for lower standards wherever this is coming from. Sometimes you will try to compromise due to cost, but that's not a smart strategy to start with. You would always want to beat or create the highest standards for your operation. You also don't want to be operating everything in-house. That's one of the biggest mistakes new entrepreneurs do, and you have to outsource as much as you can afford or whatever you don't have the expertise to do in-house. And at the same time, you cannot be overpaying for services, whether that's marketing, advertising, technical support, and other inclusive services. Last but not least, you don't want to be starting without a plan, and you need to be including forecasted outcomes and scenarios on your business strategy. Some of the best practices that we see for e-commerce. You do want to start with a unique branding design. That's going to take you a long way, and it's going to engage well with your customers, and it's going to claim their attention. You do want to study your competition and establish your key competitive advantages and showcase them at all channels and at all media. You also want to develop a strategy based on hard data and studying the competition, and at the same time offer the distinct sense of premium and exclusive offering to your customers. And last, you do need to understand, record, and anticipate your markets and clientele's needs. So what is the conclusion when we're discussing about e-commerce? Starting an e-commerce business in US is definitely a lower cost and medium risk venture. It is also scalable and can provide exponential growth. In US, we do have a fertile ground. US is an ideal host and perfect incubator for leading startups. At the same time, US market can be facilitated from third-party companies. You don't have to start having your own physical presence, at least in the beginning, and until you see what segment and what exactly, what's the plan that you have to lay out for your brand. When it comes to user experience and customer experience, it can be customized and tailor-made. And marketing and advertising strategy can also be adjusted and prioritized, and don't kill your overall business plan from the beginning. And supply chain, inventory level, and product assortment decisions can be optimized according to your sales, to finance, and strategy plans. So that's all on our end. We do have a lot of references that we can leave with you at the end, and we will be available also for the Q&As. And I will pass it on now to George.
Konstantinos, thank you very, very much for a very comprehensive and insightful presentation. That was great. At this point, I'd like to give the floor to Betty in Greece. Betty, I believe there are a couple of questions that have been submitted by our attendees. I don't know whether you're going to want to go through with that. Thank you very much. Betty, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yorgo. I am so sorry as well that we're not able to hear John Stavros today. However, his presentation, along with the rest, will be shared with everyone so that they can, everybody gets a chance to see what insights he would have provided. And of course, we're going to host him in another webinar later on. I'm sorry that his equipment had a little bit of a problem, but this happens when we're dealing with technology. So let's use the rest of our time to just address a couple of questions. We do have a lot of them. However, there's hardly any time left. So maybe we can just get a couple in, and if I could ask our panelists to address these questions as, you know, in a sentence or two or in a couple of minutes, so that we can close off our session respectful towards our participants. And before I go to the first question, I just want to say that all the presentations were excellent. I think the insights that were shared today were invaluable for our audience here. And I think that some of these questions that have come in basically just want a little bit more of what you have to give us. So let me start with a first question that has come in for Phil Kafarakis. Phil, judging by your vast experience, what do you believe are the primary reasons why Greek specialty food items are underrepresented in the US food market? And more specifically, what should Greek exporters do to gain ground versus competitors such as Italy and Spain, which were mentioned, in the US market? Phil, the floor is with you.
Just very quickly, I think it has to do with the fact that the Greek companies and in general, when they started importing into the US, they stuck with their Greek roots, which makes sense. And there's Greek Americans here, that makes sense, but they started serving just the Greek American marketplace and did not come into the marketplace to see it as an open market, the mass market that is America, that has all the diversity. So I think that continues to be a struggle for our people. Not that there's not good Greek partners here, Greek American partners that understand the dynamics, but the fact of the matter is there are companies in Greece today still that I've met that think that importing into the US means putting product in Astoria, and now they're in the US marketplace. So that thinking has to change. And there's a whole conversation on this. I won't take up too much time, but that has held us back as it relates to Greek products. And if you look at this country, the index, there's less Greek products in California because of the geography. But when you think about the Mediterranean diet, you think about the Southeast, the Southwest, you think about the West Coast, it's because distribution channels and supply chains for Greek companies are totally dependent in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. I'm sorry we don't have a lot of time to discuss this, but it's a problem that has to be resolved.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil. I hope that we're going to have a chance to discuss this issue on another webinar or another session, because it's very, very important that our companies understand what it is that we need to do differently and get more insights from you on that. Let me move on to another question. This one is around e-commerce, and in the presentation we saw from Konstantinos Tsopanelis. Konstantina, could you please outline the initial steps that a small, medium-sized Greek company with absolutely no presence in the US market would need to take in its efforts to use e-commerce as a convenient and easy tool to penetrate into the market? More specifically, should they create their own platform, directly, selling products from Greece? Should they outsource e-sales by using platforms such as Amazon? Should they form partnerships with existing platforms in the e-commerce specialty premium food item space? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I wish I had more time, like Phil said earlier, but all I can say is that we've definitely seen major opportunities for small Greek businesses like family-owned farms and family-owned businesses to initiate their market placement in the US with providers like Amazon just deteriorate. We can speak a lot about that, but the best advice that I would give to a new business that wants to start venturing in the US online space is find out what they want first. They have to lay out their criteria, their goals, and that's what will guide them towards the right decision. Meaning that you have to understand US is a very competitive market, an advanced market. When we walk through a store like Whole Foods, Mr. Lawson joined us earlier, or premium outlets, when we're talking specialty and Greek specialty food, you will very soon understand that we're lagging in design, we're lagging in presentation, and we're lagging in specific call-outs. Also, the vision and the missions that we see coming from some of these companies are very limited. What our motto has been is that we want to scale up some of the smallest businesses and premium products in Greece to a national level, like Phil said earlier. So how do you go about that? That has to do a lot with business strategy. That has to do a lot with financing, with your priorities, and what are you willing to sacrifice in that process? You have to understand too that this is an investment, and it doesn't return immediately. There is some time frame needed, and nobody can guarantee that. And when especially when market dynamics change drastically, like in a COVID-19 era. But all I can say is that there are definitely a lot of different options for the new ventures and businesses that want to activate new trade channels in US market. And I will extend the US market, including Canada and Mexico, as I spoke earlier about NAFTA agreements. That's something that people and businesses in Greece needs to understand, that it's a connected market of about 500 million people.
Okay, thank you, Konstantina. Thank you very much. I know you tried to say a lot in just a very short time. And looking at time and speaking of time, unfortunately, we will have to close out our session. And in the interest of everybody who's participating, as well as our panelists, to be able to have an opportunity to speak again, we will plan additional virtual connections with all of you, whether it be in the form of webinar or some B2B virtual, let's say, connection. We will look into that. I know there's a lot of interest, so we hope to be back with you very, very soon. In the meantime, I'd like to thank everyone for excellent presentations and excellent answers to questions, and to call on board my co-host, Giorgos Michailidis, so that we can bid everybody farewell together.
So, Betty, thank you very much. It was wonderful for having you all on board on this one. Thank you very much for all the insight you provided as far as the U.S. food sector is concerned. I hope we addressed the issue from several different perspectives that actually cover all different aspects of this matter. Thank you very much all, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in one of our next webinars.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. See you next week for those who are interested in our webinar from San Francisco. Thank you.